Good day, everyone. We greet our chaplain, Father John Sescon, those who are here at Greenbelt Chapel. We greet everyone, Happy Father's Day. And I would like to thank all of you for inviting me, having me with you today to reflect on the occasion today, Father's Day, and connect it with Saint Joseph. Now, since it is also the year of Saint Joseph, I was given the task to talk or reflect on Saint Joseph and fatherhood, because today is Father's Day, and this is the year of Saint Joseph, so we shall reflect on Saint Joseph and fatherhood. Well, they are not completely unrelated concepts, because Saint Joseph, as we all know, is also a father. He was known to be the true father of Jesus during his time. If you remember that gospel passage when Jesus was speaking, reading in the synagogue in Nazareth, his fellow people from Nazareth, his townmates, recognized him as the son of the carpenter. Is he not the son of the carpenter? Also, we know, while the people during his time knew that Saint Joseph was the true father of Jesus, we know that he is not the true father of Jesus, and yet now we recognize Saint Joseph as the foster father of Jesus. And also, Pope Francis sees in Saint Joseph the image of a father more than he sees his other roles. When Pope Francis declared this year as a year of Saint Joseph, he issued an apostolic letter where he reflected on Saint Joseph as a father. He saw the role of Saint Joseph as a father to Jesus. For our reflection, I think there is no better source than the latest document of the Church on Saint Joseph. Pope Francis, on declaring this year a special year of Saint Joseph, issued, as I said, an apostolic letter. And the title of that apostolic letter is Patris Corde, translated into English as With a Father's Heart. And actually, that apostolic letter and the declaration of the special year of Saint Joseph was to mark the 150th anniversary of the declaration of the Church of Saint Joseph as patron of the Universal Church by Pope Pius IX in 1870. 150th anniversary of the proclamation of Saint Joseph as patron of the Universal Church. So, the role of Saint Joseph that we are actually celebrating, 150th anniversary, is his role as patron of the Universal Church. But Pope Francis opted to reflect on the fatherhood of Saint Joseph, his role as a father to Jesus. Now, before Patris Corde, there was an apostolic exhortation by Pope John Paul II. He issued that in the year 1989. And the title of that apostolic exhortation is Redemptoris Custos, translated into English as Guardian of the Redeemer. If you happen to read that apostolic exhortation, the subtitle or the contents of that apostolic exhortation was a discussion on the person and mission of Saint Joseph. If you read the entirety of Redemptoris Custos, there was no mention of Saint Joseph being a father. There is a mention, but as a foster or legal father of Jesus. Not the same fatherhood, same concept of being a father, which Pope Francis in his apostolic letter discussed and reflected on. So in Redemptoris Custos, John Paul II saw Saint Joseph only as a guardian, as the title of the exhortation suggests, guardian of the Redeemer. He did not say father of the Redeemer, but guardian of the Redeemer. Well, rightly so, because the fact remains that Saint Joseph is not the true father of Jesus. He was just the foster father of Jesus. But Pope Francis saw in Saint Joseph the role and true image of a father. Hence, the title, Patris Corde, with the father's heart. Now, in Patris Corde, Francis reflected on the 7 fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph. And I strongly believe that revisiting Patris Corde and reflecting on the fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph, we can create a profile for our fathers today to imitate. After all, one of the objectives of Pope Francis in writing this apostolic letter declaring the special year of Saint Joseph is to imitate Saint Joseph in his virtues and in his zeal. In fact, in the words of Pope Francis, Saint Joseph's figure is close to our own human experience. So I would like us to visit again Patris Corde and see what Saint Joseph through Pope Francis tells us, especially those who are fathers among us. As I said, in Patris Corde, Pope Francis reflected on the 7 fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph. He said, Saint Joseph is a beloved father, a tender and loving father, an obedient father, an accepting father, a working father, a creatively courageous father, and a father in the shadows. So, for today, in our reflection, let us reflect on them, on the 7 fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph, one by one. First, Saint Joseph, according to Pope Francis, is a beloved father. This is connected with the second, actually, which says Saint Joseph is a tender, loving father. Saint Joseph was not only beloved, he is also loving. In fact, Saint Joseph's being beloved proceeds from his being a loving person. A loving person with the role of a father. So, let us talk about the concept of love. Saint Joseph is beloved and also loving. And connect this, see its relevance to Saint Joseph's fatherhood. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian author of the novel Crime and Punishment, which was published in 1866, wrote another novel under the title Demons. Demons was published in 1871. And we find in Demons these words of the author, Dostoevsky. He said, "One cannot love what one does not know. One cannot love what one does not know." If we take Dostoevsky's words, it only shows that there is a close connection between love and knowledge. To love and to know. In fact, this is affirmed in biblical theology because in the language of the Bible, knowledge or the verb to know has something to do with the concept of intimacy. Like for example, when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and said she would be the mother of God, of course, the reaction of Mary was shock. And in response, Mary asked, "How shall this be, seeing I do not know man?" How shall this be? seeing, I do not know man. The old versions of the English Bible use the verb to know to express intimacy, because when Mary said to the angel, how shall this be? Seeing, I do not know man, we know the meaning. She had no relations with any man yet. Therefore, we can claim that we cannot love someone whom we do not really know. That for us to prove we love someone, either we know him or her, or at least we want to know more him or her. Well, we cannot doubt that Saint Joseph loved. We cannot doubt the love of Saint Joseph. If love does not exist in Saint Joseph, he should not be venerated as a saint in the first place. It is love that makes a saint, inasmuch as God is love, according to the first letter of John. But the fact that he is the greatest of the saints next to Mary, we cannot doubt the love in Saint Joseph. And if Saint Joseph loved Mary and Jesus, and he is beloved by the same, and following the connection between love and knowledge, we are certain that Saint Joseph fully knows Mary and Jesus. He knows everything about them. If we try to connect knowledge and love, Saint Joseph being a loving person and a beloved person, Saint Joseph, Mary also, and Jesus must know each other deeply. Now, what does this tell us, fathers among us? What insights do we get from this? Well, when you are asked, do you love your children? If that question is thrown to you right now, what would be your answer? I presume every father among us would give a definite yes. Yes, I love my children. Yes, we profess our love for our children, but do we really love them in the sense of what we are reflecting on here? Do we really know our children? Do we know their very being, their likes and dislikes, their needs and their longings? Or because of our busy schedule, our work, our personal activities, we do not even have time to check on our children. Now, let us think about this. If our children is known to other person more than to us, then maybe this is a wake-up call. When the friends of our children know more our children than we do our children, then we have to think, do we really know our children that we claim we love them? Let us think about this. Because knowledge and love are so connected to each other. The third and the fourth fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph in Patris Corde are also connected to each other. Saint Joseph, according to Pope Francis, is an obedient father and also an accepting father. Now, it seems ironic that Pope Francis described Saint Joseph or the fatherhood of Saint Joseph using the concept of obedience, using the word obedient. Normally, obedience does not apply to fathers, but to children, as children should be obedient to their parents, to their fathers, and not the other way around. So we often hear obedient sons, obedient daughters, obedient children, but never heard of obedient father. But how was Saint Joseph obedient? How did Pope Francis come up with that idea in his reflection that Saint Joseph is an obedient father? Well, Saint Joseph's obedience consists in his submission to God. He plays the role of a father, someone who his child, Jesus, is obedient to. But he is also obedient to God. In fact, Saint Joseph's fatherhood to Jesus in the first place was all about his obedience to the will of God. Remember that gospel story when Saint Joseph was thinking about what to do when he discovered Mary was pregnant already, even before they got married. He was thinking about, divorcing her secretly when, lo and behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, Joseph, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. Part of that word, or those words of the angel, was the implication that stand as a father to the child in the womb of Mary. And the angel even said to Joseph, you shall name him Jesus. And when Jesus was born, Saint Joseph did not name him with any other name, but with the name God has given to him through the angel. At the middle of the night, when Herod was trying to look for Jesus, to kill him, to kill the baby Jesus, he was again awakened by the angel and told to go to Egypt. All this he did in obedience to God. His fatherhood, his role as a father to Jesus, was ultimately in obedience to the will of God. Now, what is this to us, fathers? We are fathers not only because we sired children. Well, biologically speaking, the moment that an offspring is born from us, or because of us, we become fathers. But we are fathers not only because we biologically sire children. We are fathers because in the first place, God willed us so. So in the final analysis, it is, as it is, told to us many times, our loved ones are but lent to us by God. Our children also, for that matter, are lent to us by God. We always hear and we always say, pahiram lamang sila ng Diyos. So in the exercise of our fatherhood to our children, whose will is it that should ultimately be done? That is the question. Is it your will? When we make our children do something, is it because it is the right thing to do in accordance with the will of God? Or is it only what we want them to do? Whose will is it? Our will or the will of God? Because we are all God's children. Those of us who play the role of a father are but delegates of God. Our ultimate father is God. Are we obedient? This is the question. Are we obedient to God in the exercise of our fatherhood towards our children? Because Saint Joseph was obedient to God in his fatherhood. Hence, he was an obedient father. Now, let us connect this to the other fatherly quality of Saint Joseph, accepting father. Being obedient fathers calls for an attitude of acceptance. Because there are times when we find it difficult to surrender our desires for our children to God. This happens especially when our children have wants that we do not want them to have. And we insist on what we want for them. This happens. I'm talking about, for example, their choice of friends. Sometimes we dictate on their choices of friends. Oh, do not befriend this or that. You should befriend this or that. We dictate on the choices of friends, for example, or choice of career. When you take college, for example, you will tell your children, when you take college, you take this course. Do not take that course, take this course. Or even the choice of spouse. When you marry this girl, marry this man. So are we that type who, trying to decide for our children that we insist on our will in their personal choices? But what if what they want, which sometimes would not be what we want, is what God wants for them? Now here enters the attitude of acceptance that must go with our obedience to God. Saint Joseph was not only an obedient father, he was not only obedient to God, he also accepted the will of God, even at times when the will of God was in opposition to his own will. Now, in our roles as fathers, do we place the will of God over our own and trustingly accept the will of God as better than ours? Now, think about that. Next, the fifth and the sixth fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph speak of Saint Joseph as creatively courageous and a working father. Saint Joseph is a creatively courageous father. He is also a working father. Well, everybody knows the connection of work with Saint Joseph. We have this feast on Saint Joseph on May 1, Saint Joseph the worker. In the Bible, we know the occupation of Saint Joseph. He was a carpenter. The people of Nazareth were able to identify Jesus because of his father, the carpenter. So we know the connection of work with Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph worked as a carpenter. But in Pope Francis' reflection, Saint Joseph did not only work. He does his work with creativity and courage. Hence, creatively courageous father. And that makes his fatherhood very unique. I like the reflection of Pope Francis on Saint Joseph being creatively courageous. Among the 7 fatherly qualities of Saint Joseph, this one is what I like most. I like it because it is something new. It is the first time I heard Saint Joseph being referred to as creatively courageous. And I like it because Saint Joseph took the nativity story in order to illustrate his reflection on this, creatively courageous. And in Patris Corde, he said the following words, and I quote, "Arriving in Bethlehem and finding no lodging where Mary could give birth, Joseph took a stable and, as best he could, turned it into a welcoming home for the Son of God to come into the world." You see how creatively courageous Saint Joseph was. When Joseph and Mary arrived in Bethlehem, at the time of giving birth, Saint Joseph was not able to find a decent place because all the inns were filled up, occupied, no vacancy. So, it was a moment of decision for Saint Joseph. And his courage was tested. Because if someone in the same situation would, experience the same thing, I don't know what would they feel, what that person would feel. So Saint Joseph's courage was tested. Nothing was available to be a decent place, but what he did was the stable, to turn it into something decent. A stable which is for the animals, not intended for human beings, to be a place for human beings. But Saint Joseph turned it, created it, transformed it into something suitable, not only for human being, but for the Son of God. So that's how creative Saint Joseph was. And his creativity is coupled with courage, because it took him courage in order to, think of transforming the stable into a suitable place. He was creatively courageous. And, trying to deepen this illustration and reflection, Pope Francis said, the carpenter of Nazareth, who was able to turn a problem into a possibility by trusting always in divine providence. So what Saint Joseph did in that particular story was to turn a problem. There was a problem, no place for Mary to lay and give birth to Jesus. He turned the problem into a possibility. And he was able to do this because he trusted in God. He trusted in divine providence. And that made Saint Joseph courageous. Courage comes from the Lord. Courage is given by the Lord. Nothing is impossible with God. That Saint Joseph was able to turn the problem. What is impossible? There is no room. There is no place. But it was made possible because of the grace of God. Now, reflecting on Saint Joseph as creatively courageous and working father, we see in Saint Joseph someone who trusts in God. Someone who involves God in his affairs. So what does this tell us, fathers among us? Well, we are used to seeing more women than men in churches. There were times when I would administer the sacrament of baptism with only the mother of the child present. And when I would inquire about the father being absent, well, they would often say the father is at home. Either the father is already drunk, or because attending church activities is not his cup of tea. We used to seeing more women than men in churches and in church activities. Well, matters about God is not only for women or mothers. They're for everyone, men and women. And if we think, the fathers among us, men among us, if we think that church activities or going to the church is only a matter for women, then we are mistaken. It does not lessen our manliness when we go to church and attend church activities. In fact, if one wants to be a good father to their children, he must get close to God. If we want to be a good father to our children, we have to go to the church. We have to pray to God. We have to get close to God, who incidentally we all call, women and men call him our Father. So there is no perfect picture of a father aside from Saint Joseph. And ultimately, it is God. Saint Joseph was a father to Jesus, but we know, and it is proven, that he is devoted to God. Are we also that kind of a father? A father who involves God in his affairs. And finally, Saint Joseph is a father in the shadows. Now, consider these words of Pope Francis in Patris Corde. I quote, he said, "Being a father entails introducing children to life and reality, not holding them back, being overprotective or possessive, but rather making them capable of deciding for themselves, enjoying freedom, and exploring new possibilities." End of quote. Beautiful words from the Holy Father in Patris Corde on his reflection on Saint Joseph as a father in the shadows. Our identity as father to our children does not fade until the afterlife. We are always the father of our children. It will never be taken away. Our fatherly supervision to our children is so close when they were young, when they were babies, when they are a little child. Our supervision is very close. When they were young, fragile, and weak, we stand in front of them, trying to ward off all that is dangerous to them. But as they grow old, we switch positions. We are no longer in front of them, protecting them, warding off all the dangers. But we switch positions. We want them to stand on their own, that we now stand at their back. We want them to discover things on their own. Little by little, we reduce ourselves into shadows of our children, so that our children will have the spotlight shine on them now. And this is especially true when our children become parents themselves. Now, are there fathers among us here who, even if their children have long been married and with their own family already, still meddle in their affairs? Better think over that practice, because Saint Joseph was not that kind. He is a father in the shadows. Saint Joseph taught Jesus many things when Jesus was still a child. But knowing that he is God, knowing that he has an immense or enormous mission ahead of him, he stood in the shadows. In fact, before Jesus started his public ministry, we did not hear about Saint Joseph anymore in the Bible. He was suddenly, taken away from the scene, from the story. Well, biblical scholarship would tell us that Saint Joseph already died even before Jesus started his public ministry. Well, it only shows that Saint Joseph stood at the shadows of Jesus when Jesus' time came. Now, fathers and even mothers among us can learn from Saint Joseph in our role as parents. We do not meddle in their affairs. When time comes, when they have their own families, we need to stand as shadows to our children. My dear fathers and mothers who are present here, not only fathers but also mothers, can learn from Saint Joseph. We can be beloved and loving parents. We can be obedient and accepting parents. We can work creatively and courageous. And we can always be someone in the shadow. So let us reduce ourselves, when time comes, into a shadow to our children. Thank you. Happy Father's Day.